I might probably have to leave pickleball if they had to tell me that. uh,
Paddles up and welcome to episode 22 of the Pickleball Gurus podcast. I'm Randy Manaply and I'm here with Prem Carnot, the Pickleball Guru, the world's premier pickleball coach, and author of the two best-selling books, Smart Pickleball and Drop Shot Till You Drop.
Good morning. Hi, Guru Nation.
This episode is all about your questions and we've got answers for you. We're going to start off with question number 1 from Bob, which is, on the last point of the game, our opponent hits a winning volley and then wanders into the kitchen. Is the game over? This appears to be a momentum question, Prem.
That's very true. It is a momentum question. It is, unless you have reestablished yourself back outside the kitchen or the non-volley zone line, and that would be considered a fault, and still have to wait for the point to finish before you can actually think of winning the match.
Right, just because the ball is dead doesn't mean that momentum stops. Momentum stops when momentum stops, as opposed to when the ball's dead, or after the game, or after a point for that matter.
That's right. We have to reestablish outside the kitchen line, no matter when even if there's a 2 or 3 balls which have been going back and forth, and you still have not reestablished yourself outside the kitchen, then it might still be a momentum rule. And if you touch the ball by then, it will be considered a momentum rule.
Right. So his answer is, no, the game's not over, because even though the point's over and the game's technically over, the momentum rules still apply and you can call a fault on it.
Yes. It's very clearly defined. You have to reestablish yourself outside the kitchen. The point might be over, but if you have not reestablished and if the momentum is still carrying you in, then it will be a fault.
All right, very good. And I guess the only other thing I'll add, he talks about wandering into the kitchen. That doesn't mean, let's assume that you're reestablished and then you go out to touch paddles.
That's okay.
That's okay. But you've been reestablished outside of the kitchen before you do that. All right, question number 2 from Gary. We have various opinions of when the ball is in or out. Ball hits any line, is it in or out? And this is actually a very good question, because most of the lines are in, but some of one line is in and all of the other is out. I can muddy that up even more. Do you want to talk about the lines on the kitchen and how they comprise the actual full 7 feet of the kitchen frame?
So to answer your question, in fact, it's the line on the kitchen. If the ball lands on any part of the kitchen line, be it on the side or in front, no matter where it is, that would be a fault. But if the other lines, the side lines and the back line, if the ball lands on it, it's in, and obviously, from a very technical point of view, the ball, because the pickleball generally does not compress. So if you're looking at the surface of a ball, and then on the edge of the ball, only a certain part of the ball actually lands on the court. So if it's that vertical surface is on the edge of your baseline, it would be considered out, because it actually does not land in the line, but actually outside. From a technical point of view, it's a fault, or it's an out ball, or side of it's a wide ball. Either way, it would be considered out ball. But from a naked eye point of view, it's very, very difficult to assess that one. In fact, I often say is like, if you're a line judge, it's a difficult call to make if the ball is landing very close to the line and not completely sure if it's actually the surface. Most of the time, I would say to those line judges, call it in, because it's way too close to call it. If it's not very clear that there is the distance between the line and the ball where it lands, then call it in rather than calling it out, because that's a very, very complicated one to do. Unless
Sure.
we have, like in tennis, where we have those Hawkeye lines where it actually starts beeping, because it will tell you exactly where it lands.
And so one of the ways that it's been described to me is, at least on the serve, if it hits any part of the kitchen line, it's out. But if it hits any of the other
It's
three
fault.
lines, it's good.
Any two kitchen lines, when you call it, we don't call it an out, we call it a fault.
Fault. All right, and now a question from Greg. A pickleball related question. I have read Prem's book, viewed many videos, etc., and I've tried to incorporate those effective strategies into my game. However, I find that in the heat of the play or the heat of the battle, all those do it this way strategies seem to disappear and I fall back to my typical 3.0 game. Have you found a way to keep your cool and focus on trying to incorporate these proven pickleball strategies when the fireworks start?
That's a really good question. I think it does work. There's certain ways in my personal game, which I tend to do, is sometimes I would actually let a few points go, meaning that I would let my opponents get a few points ahead of me, and then I will try and actually increase my focus and trying to win the game, or at least try and get closer to the game. Uh, and generally, most of the times, I'm much more closer than behind on score by that time, because it allows me to focus and then sort of reestablish all the strategies of just keeping the ball in play, keeping it smarter, hitting smarter shots, and allowing myself to reincorporate everything else. I have a very popular thing I often tell it to people who are competing, is especially when in doubt, just go back to the basics. So it's a good way of sort of mentally focusing yourself when in a match situation, when everything you've learned and put in place, but when it comes into be it a recreational game, but still competitive game where you're trying to apply, and then it all goes off the way. It is a sort of a mental prep to try and just like focus on one thing, get really good at it, and then one by one you start incorporating each and every strategy into your game. But every time you start a game, initially at least, you try and focus on one aspect of what you want to work on and get focused on it. And as you start focusing on it, irrelevant of what the score is, happens. But I think in this particular question, the most important part is where everything goes out of the windows, because there's a desire to win, which actually outweighs implementing the game strategies.
So you fall
Does that
back
make
into your
sense?
bad habits, is that what you're saying?
But that's right, because then we sort of revert to what has been working before, or what has been the bottom line of what they knew of the game before. But I think trying to put it one by one, and you get into this muscle memory, and then it sort of takes away from the winning part. But trying to get more and more smarter and an efficient player will actually make you a better player.
That's a great explanation for all that, Prem. Thank you. Now we have another service rule question from Wayne. Occasionally I will complain because the server will stand outside the corner baseline of the perimeter of the court. This gives them an advantage of serving really wide. Sometimes they will say they haven't heard of that rule. Also, they are really close to the center of the court and sometimes step over. So here's what the rule says about serving. At the beginning of the service motion, both feet must be behind the baseline and the imaginary extensions of the baseline. At the time the ball is struck, the server's feet may not touch the court or outside the imaginary extension of the sideline or the center line, and at least 1 foot must be on the playing surface or ground behind the baseline. And I actually saw someone that was doing a referee video about this, And he was actually explaining the imaginary extension lines that go out on the sidelines that extend, I think he said, to infinity or across the world. So what's the answer to these servers that are starting outside the baseline, Prem? That's probably a fault.
It's definitely a fault if you're starting from the baseline and you stay there and serve. Why? Wanting to serve wide. But having said that, you could always start away from that imaginary baseline stretches to the infinity, as you said. But you can start off there. By the time you make contact with the ball, both those feet has to be inside that imaginary baseline extension. So that's basically it. No matter where you start, you have to get back into position by the time you start. There are people who will start off, I don't know, some bowling or baseball players or softball players, they will start way outside and they run into it and then serve. But by the time they serve, both your feet are actually inside that imaginary extension of the base sidelines, but obviously outside the baseline.
Which is completely legal.
That's totally legal.
Yeah.
But you can't stay there and serve from that area. Then it will be a fault. The same applies, especially when you're serving. You can't step into the kitchen line. No part of your feet can't touch that baseline. If it touches, it's a fault. It's a server's fault.
Right.
So you have to be very careful about it. You can be close to it, but not not as close where your feet is just even touching that line would be considered. The only option I would say is, like, if you're really touching that line, then just get some really beautiful curved shoes, which will allow you to not touch that line, because by the time you get there, it will be. When I'm talking about curved shoes, obviously it's the toe curving, certain shoes which curve a lot more, and it stays like that. Yeah, and then so then when you land on the line, at least you know that you're not actually on the line, because most part of that shoe is actually there. But having said that, by the time you serve, the pressure goes back down on your feet, on your toes, because you're trying to serve, and by then you would have made contact with the line.
Right. And here's a pretty funny question from Ryan, who says he's suffering from pop-itis to the point that no one wants to play with him. I have this bad disposition called pop-up-itis. What can I do to stop this? Because I'm not trying to pop the shot up so my partner eats it. Are there some drills I can do that would help me keep the ball low when going over the net? Should I be holding the paddle a certain way? What about body and arm posture? Is there something I can focus on here? No one wants to play with me because of this. Thank you in advance for anything that will help me cure this debilitating form.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's a really there's a lot more into it. As you explained, there is probably paddle grip position, there's a weight transfer position, there's a lot more to it, like to explain, because I have to actually see what you're actually doing to give you a very personalized opinion. I can't really give a generalized opinion on it, but I can give you certain aspects of what generalized things can be and the drills which can help you. But if I'm you, I would probably suggest you to join one of my boot camps, or a clinic. But boot camps would probably be a better option, so that you'll have time. I'll have time to actually invest in looking at you. But even if it is not mine, you could probably join some of those really wonderful teaching professionals across the country who can help you out with it. My suggestion is you look into certain things in your personal game. In the general idea would be in that aspect would be weight transfer. Where's your weight transfer happening? What I mean weight transfer is, if you're hitting the ball from your back feet, chances are that most of the time you're going to probably pop it. because the weight is behind you. So by the time you're trying to transfer the weight into the ball, you're actually popping the ball out. That's one option, or one possibility of that happening. Sometimes it might be someone could be completely crouched, but you're just whipping it with your paddle,
In other words,
which
using
means
too
it's a
much of
more.
their arm instead of their legs for.
Absolutely, you got it right. It's mostly using the arms and trying to just snap it from there, and then that probably would lead to that pop up too. The other part is also the way they grip their paddle in a way which would make it very uneasy for them to do. So the drills related to that is always about how, as I said, it's if it is about weight transfer, is to trying to correct that measure to try and have a drill which allows you to try and place it in front of you. One suggestion, I think I've made this one in the past, but I would reiterate, is like to hit in front of a wall where you're actually transferring your weight from back to front. You know, you're actually trying to hit the ball from front instead of trying to hit it from the back to front, hitting it from in front of you. So like as if like you're hitting it onto a wall, you're making contact with the ball in front of you, making sure that you're not actually hitting the ball behind you or besides you, but in front of you, which allows you to have more of that less pop-up motions which happen with that, if that is the case. If it is about the grip, you know, it's about what type of grip you have. Generally, if it's a forehand grip, I generally would suggest you to go with a continental grip. Maybe Randy can explain to in detail about what a continental grip is.
It's the old
Right.
handshake grip.
There you go. It's like as if you're shaking a hand to someone and then you just hold your paddle, right? So the V, let me try and explain to you the V here. So it's like the paddle handle sits between your thumb and your thumb, where it is, and you're holding it like this. And so I don't know, I can say it. So it's like as if you're holding it and you're shaking a hand someone, but it's actually the V is in between. The paddle handle will be in between your index finger and your thumb. So it's holding that way rather than holding it like a claw, or if you're hitting it that way, then it would be much more complicated. So there are a few ways to look at those techniques. Uh, the corrective measures, at least in general term, is to try and make contact with the ball in front of you. Use more of your legs more than your arm, in the sense you're bending and coming up. Uh, the best example is figure out like you do how you do a bowling motion, where you lower yourself down and then actually bring yourself up as you actually launch into throwing the ball. So those are the type of exercises which can help in that movement. But personally, I think try and get some help. Really try and go into someone who can help you and coach you on that one, and it will definitely help you to get better.
Yeah, and certainly if this gentleman's interested in coming out to a boot camp, if he's having these pop-ups at the line, we have a whole 2-hour session on doing nothing but dinks. So I think that would go a long way into curing his pop-up-itis. And now we have a question from Ronnie. Our YMCA just started a pickleball ladder for doubles play. If I am the serving team and I call it the wrong score, I then serve the ball. The opponent does not return the ball but calls a fault. Is that correct? If I read Rule 4K, I should be able to call the correct score without a fault. Can I ask the opposing team what the score is? Is that a fault? We do not have referees in this, and this person is a stickler for the rules. Any and all clarification of scoring rules, etc., would be greatly appreciated.
I need to rethink through this question. So,
okay. Well, the central part of it is that they're calling out the wrong score. And so the other team's saying that it's a fault because you called out the wrong score.
I'm not completely sure of this rule. I might have to look it up and find out what exactly that means in a recreational play. If you call the wrong score, if your opponent did not hit it, you just restart over again and serve again, quoting the real score. I don't think it's a fault in a recreational setup. even if a refereed match, as you say, if the referee calls a wrong score, it'll be considered a referee mistake, and then it'll be redone again, unless the point is being played with a wrong score in place. Then that would have then there are other rules which actually indicate, like, where do you take that point away from, or where do you restart it? Do you actually, if the opponents have won the point, or if that is the case, then there's always going to be rules which would say that you had to backtrack back to the earlier point. But in a recreational setup, in this particular question, it's pretty simple. If your opponent did not hit the ball, it's not really a fault. You said it's just a wrong score. You just said the wrong score. Restart over again. That's all it is.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I would not vouch for if there's any specific rule to it, but I don't think it's a fault.
And here's an excellent strategy question from Deb. If I'm the returning team and opponents are continuously doing a good job of keeping my partner back after his serve and not allowing me to poach, should I A, stay put at the kitchen line and keep waiting for my partner to make his way in? I am where I'm supposed to be, but now there was a big, huge hole between me and my partner, and he is defending from the baseline. Or should I back up to meet my partner forming a wall and make our way to the kitchen line together?
Well, both options are actually pretty open at that point. If you're in front and you can poach, then poach. Ideally, it's better for you to be in front and then try and make your partner to get you there. But if your partner does not come up, then maybe poaching is a great option at that point if you can't finish the point off. I always say a good poach is when you're able to finish it, not keep the ball in play. That would complicate things, especially if you're out of position. In I would say in the lower level of play, maybe at that point, maybe just readjust yourself, backpedal it a little bit to just line up with your partner and try and bring your partner with you. But ideally, in a situation, is to encourage your partner to get to that kitchen line as quickly as possible or as easily as they can do. But if they don't want to do it, and I don't think you can really control that anymore, you can probably, as I said in the past, change your partner if you find a different partner to play with. But in a recreational setup, just let it be. Focus on the fundamentals of being able to be in front and then continue playing as possibly depending on where the ball is. And if you have an opportunity to poach.
Yeah, and I would be hesitant about joining your partner back at the baseline. I would just keep actively looking for the poach, even though there is that big gaping hole that you generated with the I formation.
Yeah, that's a complicated place to be, and it happens quite a lot, I would say, in recreational play, where you might have a mismatch, or sometimes players who don't want to do it. And in that particular case, I would just focus on playing my game. And sometimes I would not even poach, simply because the person who I might be playing with would not really like me poaching. And so in that particular case, I would just focus on the fundamentals of being where to be, where the ball is, and adjust my game pertaining to that, rather than try and make anything about my partner, because as we all know, I have no control over my partner as much as anyone else in the world.
Right.
The only control I have is on my game, and that's all I can look for. And so that's what I would suggest to you, is if you can control that part of your game and get more good at what you do, don't worry about it. I'm sure this particular situation is in a recreational setup, so it's if your partner is willing, then it's a great thing. If they're not willing, then forget about it and focus on working on the fundamentals of your game.
And here's an odd question from Ron in Arizona. Recently, a new player at my courts in Arizona started to hold a pickleball and other objects in his non-paddle hand while in the ready position. He stands with his paddle up and his other hand with an object such as a ball or a light weight. He says it's for balance. I never came across this before. Is there a rule against holding something in the other hand? I guess it would be under the distraction rule.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's part of the distraction rule. It can be claimed in the distraction rule. Um, I think, Randy, you were here once in Florida. I'm talking about when you were here. Do you remember this gentleman who did not have a arm on one side, and he was wearing a prosthetics on his one arm? I think it was his left arm. He had a prosthetics,
Okay, was that a
and
Pickleball U?
at
Yeah.
Pickleball University, and so this gentleman had this customized hand with a little claw-like type of thing, so that he could actually hold the ball. It was not actually a hand on the end of that prosthetics. It was sort of a three-pronged claw where he could just hold the ball,
Mm-hmm.
and then he would serve out of it, and then he would be there. So you couldn't consider that as a distraction, because that obviously is helping him, you know, uh, doing it. And he was an amazing player to start with, uh, and uh, and a very athletic gentleman. So I don't think that's an issue. Maybe having an extra paddle on the other hand would be considered a distraction, and it's illegal. That I know is a very illegal thing to do.
And that's what I was going to bring up. There's a rule against not having two paddles in your hand, but
That's right.
or having a paddle in each hand. You can only have one paddle on the court. But I
That's
don't
right.
believe there's any type of rule that says you can't be holding something else. The closest thing that I could find in the US APA rules is when serving, if you only have one hand, you can bounce the ball with the serve and then hit it. And where I'm kind of going with that is if you have an issue with balance, I don't see why you wouldn't be allowed to, from a disability standpoint, have something that would enable you to increase your balance, just as long as it's not another paddle.
That's right. See, I have so many bracelets in mine. It's my
Yeah, there you
balance.
go.
Hopefully, no one is going to tell me that I might have to take all my bracelets out, because that would be not good. I might probably have to leave pickleball if they had to tell me that. No, I don't think that is, considered illegal to have. There are a lot of recreational plays where I'm holding a ball in my hand when I'm serving, sometimes because, or I don't have a pocket,
Right.
and I might just be holding it in my hand. So I don't think that's an issue. We can look for excuses, but I think if you're focused on the ball, um, which is being hit, then I think the rest is no distraction, really.
And one of the questions that a lot of people come out and ask is, what paddles do you recommend? And now you can talk
Well,
about how there's some great low-cost paddles available in the show notes that we can direct people to.
absolutely. I have had the joy of actually recently exploring a few low-cost paddles from a company called New People. It's a wonderful. They gave me an array of paddles to test, and I do get a lot of paddles to be tested from different paddle manufacturers across the country and the world. And I was pleasantly surprised for such a low cost paddle. Um, you have these presumed idea that it has to be expensive to have a good quality paddle, and I was really surprised by New People's new versions of paddles, which I received and I've been testing. Um, I would be lying to you that I was very skeptical at the beginning because of the price point it had, uh, and um, and I haven't even tried all the paddles, but I have tried a few paddles, and I can say some of them are really, really good. It's a carbon fiber technology with a Nomex core in certain ones, and I pretty much enjoyed hitting with it. In fact, I just play with it all the time nowadays. At least I've been trying, but I have to test a few more paddles. But I definitely would recommend that as a paddle for anyone who wants to start and even wants to be a good player with it, because they seem to have a good variety of performance paddles as well as low-end paddles, and all of them are extremely reasonable. They are under $70 for most of them, so it's a very affordable paddle, and some of these come with two paddles too. And just because they're cheap, don't make an assumption that they're bad paddles. They're actually very good paddles. So so I would definitely recommend new people as of the recent times. And outside that, obviously, soon, I'm hoping soon, we will have our signature series of paddles happening, and that is actually made by Baseline Sports. We're just finishing off the last part of USAPA approval, and once that is done, that will also be viable. But having said that, there are really some really good quality paddles out across, no matter which company produces them. There's some really good quality paddles across the nation and the world. But for the
All right.
moment, I would say New People is one I feel very comfortable with.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to their Amazon store in the show notes. And now a different question about paddles from Dave in Tellico Village out in Tennessee. A question about dropping your paddle. While standing at the kitchen line, I accidentally dropped my paddle into the kitchen and picked it up and resumed play. My opponent said I'm not allowed to pick up my paddle because the rules say any item dropped into the kitchen, for example, a hat, may not be retrieved from the kitchen until the rally is over, and during play, the dropped object becomes a part of the court. However, I cannot find anything that explicitly says a drop paddle is to be treated the same as other objects. I wish the rules were more explicit. If players are not allowed to pick up their paddle and be dropped in the kitchen, what are they to do? Borrow their partners and toss it back and forth to finish the point, race off the court to get another paddle, stay on the court and dodge balls since they would just become a target, or pick up their paddle and continue playing as common sense would dictate?
Uh, well, I think the common sense would dictate here. I'm not a rule expert here, but I would not. I can probably go on a limb and say that that probably is not an accurate statement. If your paddle is dropped on the kitchen and you want to pick it up, you can pick it up and play. In most cases, even all the objects, if it's, be it a hat or anything else, if it's a hindrance to the game, to the flow of the game, and if it's a refereed game, then I think the referee would probably, stop the game and make sure that that's been removed. But if it's a hat or wristband or something like that, it would be a different story. It just becomes a part of the court. The paddle dropped into the kitchen, unless in the act of volleying it drops into the kitchen, then it's a fault straight out. There's nothing else you can do. It's a fault
Right.
straight, and the point is over by then. But if your partner is hitting the ball and your paddle has dropped into the kitchen, absolutely you should be taking the paddle back and playing. I don't think there's anything um, stopping you from not taking the paddle, and because then by that point that means you've lost a point. Period, because you've dropped the paddle and you can't play. So the next ball comes to you have nothing else to do. Um, so I would probably think the common sense will prevail. I don't know if that is actually true, but I will probably investigate it.
Yeah, I think the distinction that I can't get my head around is if it drops in the kitchen, why would the difference be the kitchen versus any other part of the court if you dropped your paddle? Um, and I seriously doubt that there's something in the rules that say if you drop your paddle into the kitchen, you're not allowed to pick it up. I think where the one player's interpreting that from is if you volley the ball and your hat or your sunglasses fall off into the kitchen, then that's a fault.
Yes, but if you sometimes if you're not actually volleying from the kitchen line, but you're playing when you're jinking, and at some point, just as you're jinking, your hat falls into the kitchen line. I think you can just step up and take the hat or your wristband away from it, from the court. I don't think you have to leave it there. Is what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like, say for example, I'm dinking, and then one of my beads bracelets breaks and falls into the court. Then I would, if it is, I would probably stop the point at that. I mean, probably finish the point. But if it's a different thing, if it's a uh, say my hat or my sunglasses fall into it, if I'm dinking, then I'll just pick it up. There's no fault in it. I'll just pick it up.
Yeah.
But if it falls, obviously, while I'm in the act of volleying, then obviously that at that point becomes a fault.
All right. Thank you for your answers, Prem, and thanks to everyone for their questions. If you're interested in coming out to a boot camp and maybe cure your pop-up-itis, as one gentleman had a case of, we have Charlotte coming up in this month, in August, actually, on the 21st. There's only 2 spots left for Charlotte. Then you're off to Denver, where in September 24th, I think. It's either 24th or 25th. There's 1 spot left there. You're off to Sacramento with 4 spots left in October. Tucson in November, where I believe you have 2 spots left. And then there's a few spots left in the Costa Rica one coming up in 2020 in December. And I'm going to put down in the show notes links to the other boot camps if you want to check out our schedule. But Prem, tell us about Jamaica in 2022 if people are looking for long range planning.
Well, yes, I've been excited to be a part of American Express Travel Agency, and they have actually set up a wonderful pickleball camp in December 2022 in Jamaica in the South Sandals. It's sort of a totally and all-encompassing
all-inclusive
package, which basically includes not only your transfer from the airport to the hotel, but you have 12 dedicated pickleball courts. You have pretty much 2 sessions in a day. All the restaurants and all the meals and all the drinks, all the liquor and high spirits, whatever they call it, are included in this package. And so is deep sea fishing, snorkeling, scuba diving, and a few number of other activities outside that. And they have 5 restaurants, I think, and all those restaurants are also included. You could go and eat anywhere you feel like it, whenever you feel like it. Outside pickleball, obviously. So it seems like a very interesting destination, and I'm sure in the show notes we'll put some link to that so that they can see that one. And the same company is also will be doing one in the Turks and Caicos Islands in December 2021. December 2020 was booked. So then 2021 would be another option also from this new venture I have with American Express. And I will also ensure, I know during this tough times, as well as the COVID-19 has been tough on many, personally, physically, financially also. And I have also made sure that the boot camps I've done after a long layoff starting in June has been very, very strict. I not only follow the strict protocols of the CDC, I actually impose my own protocols, or so to speak, where I do take into consideration very seriously all the
social distancing
as for when I'm doing the drills with them, as well as making sure the balls are cleaned up and so that they are sanitized, as well as getting myself tested personally, as well as my and afterwards. I can't impose that on my participants, but definitely I make sure that they are healthy before they join the group. So, and there's a lot of questioning. I think, Randy, you do that on your side to make sure that they are they've done the necessary part. So I can tell you that after Richmond, I went before and after I tested myself, I knew that I didn't infect anyone, nor did I get infected. So rest assured that I do everything to protect yourself, but at the same time, and we will do everything to, keep the schedule in place. But if there are things with changes statewide, impositions are put in place, then we will do the best we can to try and reschedule it as quickly as we can. So I just want to be conscious and also understanding of the choices people make.
Sure.
But for the moment, we are set for all these ones. Unless things go drastically. If that is the case, then I would definitely reschedule them as early and quickly as possible when it is safe. So stay safe as much as possible. Stay safe.
All right. Thanks to everyone for their questions again. And as I mentioned, I'll put all those links available in the show notes. The other thing I'll put in the show notes is a link to Napipo's Amazon store, and also the links to the Sandals 2022. And we'll see about doing the Turks and Caicos one also. If you haven't done so already, head on over to pickleballguru.com and become a member of Guru Nation. No cost whatsoever to join, meaning free. And speaking of free, when you sign up, you'll receive your brand new toolkit, 5 tools you need to take your game to the next level. And you'll also receive a bunch of other gifts. And while at pickleballguru.com, check out the plethora of strategies, tips, and tricks, from playing against bangers to stacking to drop shots. And as I mentioned, joining Guru Nation is free, and you should also check out some of our long-form webinars like this one, like why the middle is so important, dancing with your partner, partner communication, and much, much more. At our gear page, you can get a Smart Pickleball t-shirt like Prem is wearing, a Smart Guru baseball cap, or a sling pack, as well as other fun and exciting cool pickleball t-shirts and gear, like my favorite Dink Star t-shirt. I wore it this time. And if you want the best prices for your custom design pickleball tournament or club, you can email dinkt at sales@dinkt.com. Links to all this is available in the show notes, plus upcoming clinics and boot camps, as I mentioned, which includes an upcoming boot camp in Charlotte with only 2 spots left. That's coming up in near the end of August, on August 21st. And I think that's all I have, Prem. Oh, if you're interested in a boot camp, use coupon code podcast for $500 off. Email me at randy@thepickleballguru.com if you're coming with a partner, and you get even more money off. Now I think I'm done. Anything else, Prem?
And is there anything else, Randy, you have to question me?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Guru Nation. And thanks for the questions. You've got me having to think of all these rules, per se, at least on the rules questions, that I need to investigate more. I know it from, understanding the game and having played it for a long time. But I'm pretty sure I need to just be technically honed on knowing exactly when these questions are being asked. But I appreciate the questions, and keep those questions coming. I'll be more than happy to answer as much as I can and as truthfully as I can. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful and blissful rest of the summer.
All right. Thanks, Prem.
Bye-bye.